Welcome back, everyone. The last video actually went down really well. I'm pretty surprised because as far as I was concerned, this car was, pretty junk really, and it was purely just an engine for the E30. That idea everyone seemed to love, so we're going to go ahead with the S54 E30. I'd have done it anyway because I'm doing it for me, I'm not doing it for the internet, but I'm happy that everyone likes the idea and it's gone down well, so it should be quite a good build series. There has been a little bit going on behind the scenes since the last video. I've just touched on this thing a little bit. The power, the battery drained, which wasn't an issue when I was driving the car, but I assumed that all of this horrific hi-fi equipment was probably the cause of it, so we'll see if it starts today and if the battery's still charged. That power cable, I suspect, I don't know, it could have been touching something. Unfortunately, the old Alpine fell victim. I was a little bit rough removing it, but it's old anyway, so no big deal. The M3, I've had a ton of messages regarding parts, etc. As you can see, the CSL diffuser's gone already. There's a lot of interest in this full Miltech exhaust, so I'm going to take that off today and clean it up, and hopefully that'll be gone soon. Other parts, I've had a lot of messages, wheels, the whole rear end. Basically, if you want parts from this car, you're going to have to be quick, because I was surprised how efficient YouTube was in sort of being an advert for getting rid of a car. So that's been a good thing. I did have a little bit of a hold up. The M3, hang on. So the M3 gave me a bit of trouble. The K-Sport brakes are an aluminium monoblock construction, so basically any sort of brake dust, and I run quite dusty pads, the M1144s can be quite dusty. Basically you can get brake dust sort of crammed everywhere, and the pads were sort of starting to bind a little bit, so I found that the brakes were just starting to sort of just bind, but there were nothing bad. I mean, the car was driving fine, but when it came to removing the pads, they were pretty well stuck, and one of them delaminated taking them out, so that actually left me with 0 out of 4 cars running, because this thing's off the road at the minute too. So I was a bit frustrated, and I was not very well, and I didn't really want to film the whole process. So basically I got some new pads from Martin at MS Motorsport, who sorted me out again, thank you. And the E46 is back on the road again now, which is obviously a good thing. I'd like to have filmed it if I wasn't ill and I wasn't in a rush and I didn't have work to worry about and all those kind of things, but shit happens. Fingers crossed, let's see if the E30 starts, because we're going to need it out the way to start stripping this M3. I don't know why I doubted it, because E30s are just the best thing ever, so of course it did start straight away first thing. I suspect that the extra hi-fi wiring and all that shit that someone else had put in the past was the issue, so if you're thinking about doing that, just don't, because it's probably the worst thing ever. I'm just trying to decide where to start with this, because obviously I said there's been a lot of interest in the exhaust, and there's also been a lot of interest for the rear complete axle, so the diff and arms and suspension brakes, etc., all as one thing. So it would make sense just to rip those off and get them sold, but I've kind of got these ideas floating around in my head of doing a few silly things before I get rid of the car. As I mentioned in the last video, I had a few ideas, but most of them were pretty illegal, so I didn't go ahead with those. But I think there's still a few sort of entertaining things that could be done before this gets before it meets its demise. So I decided to start taking off the exhaust, because if I do anything too silly it might get damaged. I just want to show you the consequences of using cheap hardware, because basically I'd started unbolting this, which I guess hasn't actually been on the car that long, but because someone's used cheap carbon steel bolts, basically what happens when you use cheap carbon steel bolts against a stainless steel exhaust is you get a dissimilar metals reaction. So you get a reaction because of the differences between the two metals, and basically just don't do it. Just don't be an idiot. Like, you fit a stainless exhaust, just use stainless bolts. The last video had quite a lot of comments saying that I should restore this car and I should use it, etc., and it was too nice. Obviously I've already got an E46 M3 and I much prefer mine, but I just want to show you, I mean, there's just bodges everywhere. Like, this is like a nut and a bolt with a nut on the back of it, but like, look at the crust, like the crustaceans. Extraction's just arrived, so I'm going to show you what's going on at the minute.
Alright, like.
Do some noise. It's a bit rowdy. Right, in the start of the last video I said basically if you like sort of stupidity and you want stuff to continue, sort of to engage in the video and stuff, and it did, so I have to stick to my word. This video is going to be filmed over 2 days, but I'm going to come back on Tuesday and we're going to cut the roof off this and drive it around, so yeah. Think what you want, really. It's now two days after when I was filming last. The exhaust is sold already, so whatever I said about that, ignore it. It's sold in less than an hour of being online, so I'm hoping the rest of the parts are going to go that easily, because it'll make my life a lot easier. The E30 I've just moved out the way a little bit because I didn't really want to leave it outside because the weather's pretty awful, so it's actually my fault because I'm off work, so you know how it goes. But perfect weather for an M3 Spider. Sunroofs are gay. I appreciate this is a terrible idea to most people, and it kind of is to me, but I think it's funny. I really, probably 10 years ago, would never even expected to have owned an M3, but I'm now about to cut the roof off one.
We've got the biggest grind in the world.
Close up for the first cut.
It's fucking sad.
It's a good meme.
I mean, people watching going, don't. Please don't cut it. God. Is it dying?
No. battery was almost dead on the camera, so I've put it on charge for a little bit. So while we've been doing that, we've removed the airbags because I was a little bit concerned about them going off in my face. And obviously you've seen I smashed the window because it was going to break regardless. We found this. It's gone in the bin. And we found Keen. Hopes and Fears by Keen, which is quite appropriate for this car, so that's going in the bin as well. And David's in putting the dash back together. Lewis is supervising. So there's actually only one cut left to make before the roof comes off, and then we'll try and tidy the edges up. So it's about to happen. We will make what's called? Yeah. It's heavier than I thought it would be. This was silly. Yeah.
Is that free? That's
Right, this is going to be the first time it goes down on its wheels, so if it folds, it's going to make my life difficult.
The wing?
Solid.
Oh.
That's fucked.
to start.
It's not dead battery, is it?
Could be. The car's having a bit of a fit. I think we've maybe damaged an earth somewhere, so every module just going insane, turning on and off. So we're going to try and pull some fuses and try and I just want it to run. I think it'll be funny driving it around, so we'll see how it goes.
Easily Theftable.
Theftable.
Fuck me. I think I've got them all there, mate. There's nothing really else. Oh, side airbag number 11.
Yeah, pull that one.
Pull all airbag fuses.
Oh no, see, it's the same one as I pulled earlier. It says airbag and side airbag. So I'm guessing
they all work off the same fuse.
Why did they put them twice?
This is terrible.
Right, so we just. I think that's alright, yeah. I think
Good.
Ready for stunt level 100. Yeah, boy!
Did it actually work?
It's the best part of the car, that's probably my favourite part of the car. Yeah, boy! So, it appears to be not doing it anymore. We've removed some fuses, but the battery was also quite flat, so could have been a bit of both, really. This might be the first cold start of an E46 M3 Spider with no exhaust. car's running. I wasn't really expecting that, and it was pretty entertaining. It's very loud. We're going to do a little bit of rust repair and then the car will be finished. It's probably better than the job that the previous owner did. Good match, sir.
It's a masterpiece.
Thanks, well.
Ooh. Congratulations. I think it's quite obvious already that this video is a joke. I didn't do this for online attention. I just did it because me and my friends thought it'd be funny to do it, and we had a laugh, so it was worth it. To address what's probably going to be the most common questions, yes, the shells are worth money. However, the way I see this one, it was a sunroof model, it had a bit of rust and the boot floor's cracked, so as far as I was concerned this shell wasn't really worth a great deal of money, so I thought I'd just have some fun with it. And more so, the previous owner, I'd sort of explained in the last video, had had a really terrible time with the car, and I didn't really want to sort of buy it off him cheap and see it go back on the road again, because it's just not very nice. And so it's getting kind of dark now, and it's a bit frustrating really, because I came down with intentions to get this video finished because I want to get it straight out. But I'll just roughly, so as I was saying, someone's lost a lot of money on this car, and I think it's a bit sort of disrespectful for me to come and sort of pull the engine out of it and sell the shell to someone else and likely end up with different plates on it, etc. But I'd rather just cut this thing up. As I mentioned, the S54 is going in the E30, so I wasn't going to repair the car and sell it as a whole car anyway. That was never my intentions. So I think the final nail in the coffin for this car is I'm going to see how bad the subframe, obviously, well, I've already made the coffin for this car, but I want to pull the subframe off and see how bad it is. So I think I'll probably film that, because I think it's quite interesting. So this car was a running driving car, and it wasn't making any noises or doing anything untoward. So, you know, your M3, if you're watching this and you own one, may also be in a similar condition underneath. So we'll pull the subframe off and take a look at that, and maybe give some people anxiety, because it's quite likely. So I kind of like touching it at the start of the video, you know, like it's been good to sort of get a lot more engagement from people who aren't regular subscribers. So if you did like this sort of stupid behaviour, obviously do the whole like and subscribe and all that stuff, because I do think the S54 E30 build is going to be pretty interesting, and it should come together a lot quicker, because obviously I've got most of the parts ready, and the car isn't a total rust bucket like the O2 was, so it's coming.